Hello everyone, my name is Babalisk, and today I'm going to help you get the information you need from GUdecks.com, as well as import your first deck. If you just started playing Gods Unchained, you've probably already realized that the game doesn't hold your hand on deck construction outside of your starter decks for each god that they give you. The lack of internal direction from the game means that players need to seek out extra information in order to make educated decisions, especially free-to-play players who don't have the luxury of going through and buying whatever card whenever they want. That's why I recommend searching up GUdecks.com. I'll put the link in the description, that way you don't have to worry about getting fished by a random website. In order to reach GUdecks, all you have to do is open your browser, type in www.GUdecks.com, press enter. Super easy. You probably didn't even need to walk through it, but I just wanted to make sure that nobody got fished. So once you arrive here at GUdecks, you're going to see a ton of different information. Most notably though, I'm going to show you the button called the Meta button, which you're going to live and die by as a new player. If you press the Meta button, you're going to be prompted with all of this information. You can select whether you want to look by a different time frame, different rankings, different archetypes, different matches, or how many matches and different gods. Typically, you'll want to pay the most attention to the time frame and how many matches and the user rank. If you remember correctly, I told you how a lot of the Mythic players that play their best decks don't come out until Friday, and they stay around from Friday to Sunday. Now, if I was on like Wednesday or Thursday and I was searching the last 3 days, I would see a lot of the people who are either trying out pet decks or trying to get better with these decks, and I wouldn't have an accurate picture of what the meta actually looks like. So, when you're on a day like Sunday, where the last 3 days have been the ranked event, setting it to 3 days is a great option. But let's say it's Thursday and I want to know what's doing well. Well, the best thing I can really do is look at the last 7 days, and then change whatever ranking to whatever one, suits me. So the S to Mythic is Shadow to Mythic, the G to Mythic is Gold to Mythic, and then the Mythic standing is exclusively Mythic level players. For new players, I would probably focus on the Shadow to Mythic until you've got a firm understanding of the game, and then graduate to the Gold to Mythic standing when you're looking at decks. And then finally, when you think you've got the game nailed down and you've started to accumulate a nice little cash pile for yourself in value of cards, that's when I would start peeking around in the Mythic standing and decide what decks you want to play. I'm going to forewarn you though, as a free-to-play player, it's going to take a while before you pick up Demogorgons and Pyramid Wardens. Pyramid Wardens typically aren't required to play a lot of the in-game decks, but a lot of the in-game control decks do require Demogorgons in order to be viable. And if a deck is doing remarkably well, like this Board White Death deck here is, you're going to notice that the cards in the deck, for instance, Half-Life, End Times, Apocalypse Now, End Times isn't really one of them, but Apocalypse Now, for instance, they have another card they like to run called Ragnarok. They're going to be ridiculously priced, especially if they're out of print. So they might be out of your reach, so you're going to kind of have to go in and play around and find out what you're going to be able to afford as a free-to-play player, and if you're going to be able to afford the deck at all, at least in the foreseeable future. Now, one strategy, and this is the one I've chosen to adopt, is I would love to play a deck like this, but unfortunately I have to get to the point where I can accrue enough value that I can play and unlock enough points and cards and such to purchase my own Demogorgons. So right now I've picked up a different deck that I'm enjoying right now, but not necessarily the one that I plan to stick with for a very long time. My in-game goal with showing you these Mythic decks and explaining all that is I need you to understand what your goal is going to be as a free-to-play player so that you can get there and maximize your value as a ranked player. If you go back and you look at the Shadow to Mythic, you're going to immediately notice there's a lot more aggressive stuff, like nature, war, a lot more variety in the Deception and Death decks, as well as the Mage decks. And really, there's a lot more variety at these lower tiers. And if you see your win ratio, it's a lot higher for a lot of these other decks that when you get up to the Mythic rating, they don't exist. Essentially, the Mythic rating ends up being about 6 decks, more or less, that have really, really good win ratios. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be saucy and brew something up yourself, but as a free-to-play player, I definitely encourage you pick something and learn it by the book, so that while you're learning the game, you can still develop consistency that's going to enable you to build your collection. So what I like to show new players is decks like the Big Beast Nature deck. You can immediately notice here that it sports a pretty good win rate, and you're probably looking at this 97.6, why don't all the pro players just play this? Well, what you need to understand about the win rate that GUdecks lists is it's talking about what this player played, so the 41 matches that this guy played, and what ranking he is at. If I wanted to search him up, I would assume he's probably somewhere between the Shadow to Gold range, and he did very well, so he was a really good player, he knew his deck in and out, and his deck was really consistent and well tuned. For a new player, however, you're going to have to take advantage of the sort by estimated price. So you definitely want to avoid trying to build the expensive decks, and this price is listing in Ethereum, so you may have to do that kind of conversion yourself. But if you go into the deck, so I've selected this gentleman's deck right here. It's a low-costing deck. He conveniently had the 97.6 win rate. I open it up. I'm going to see what cards he used in the deck and even be able to copy his deck to import straight into God's Unchained. Right off the bat, I can see that this player's learned to pilot the deck really well, and he's developed it with a lot of consistency. You can notice here that he's got everything from core set and welcome set, meaning he hasn't really gotten any expansion cards in his collection, likely. If I wanted to copy this deck, or at least see if I had the majority of the cards in it, all I would have to do is hit the copy deck code button here, open up my client, click the workshop, click import deck, and then Control V the code into here. Hit import, and at this point you would receive a pop-up showing you what cards you did not have. For me, I have all the cards that he had in his deck. But for you, you may get a pop-up telling you that you're missing a couple of them. That's not a big deal at this rating. What you're going to want to focus on doing with the cards that you don't have is look in your collection and see if there are cards that are similarly statted that you can replace them. For instance, if you're missing a 1-mana 2/2, you can replace it with a different 1-mana 2/2 you might have. And a lot of times that's not going to make a massive drastic change to the deck. You can even go and make upgrades to the deck. For instance, I have this 1-mana 1/4 with regen 1, and he didn't have it in his collection, but I could replace that card with that card, and it would have been seen as an upgrade, because being able to trade 1 for 4, or rather be able to trade 1 damage a turn to 2/2s that you're going to encounter at a lower elo is going to be a lot more controlling for you and allow you to have more leeway in your combat decisions. It's also going to teach you about managing the health of your creatures and effectively controlling the battlefield. In any case, once you've got the deck imported and you've filled in the mana curve how you need to, you'll want to come back through and make sure you go through and check to see if you have any cards in your collection that are upgrades onto the slot. For instance, Bladefly here is 6 power and toughness for 4 mana, essentially. He's playing a 4 mana 5/3. Likely he doesn't own Bladeflies, so what I would do is I would replace that for the Bladefly. The Confused Rhino being a 4 mana 5/5, however, is a design choice of whether you want to go for that extra power toughness and having 3 smaller creatures, or if you want 1 big creature that's just going to bust through whatever blockers they might have. So I've given you enough information here that you can kind of go and play around and find out what kind of deck you want to be playing right now, or that you can be playing right now, and to give you an idea of what to kind of look forward to in the future. You aren't really locked in to one deck or the other, although when it comes to buying and trading expansion cards, you do have to be careful because some of the values can randomly get wacky as new decks become more popular and sport off how good certain cards synergize with others. GUdecks doesn't just tell you what cards you should and shouldn't be playing, but it'll also help you track your own stats. If you hit the meta button, it'll bring you back to this page, and you can hit the player stats button, where you can input your name and it'll tell you, or it'll allow you to pull yourself up rather, and show you how you've been performing in your recent matches with each god. It'll tell you during the weekend events what your current standing is, how many wins out of how many wins you have, what your total wins are for the What Immortal prize, and also what your current standing in the Blessing of the Gods and what you need to do to fulfill that. It'll even show you what points based on your current rank you're going to be earning. Now, for the Blessing of the Gods event, it's not a 1 point to 1 god token ratio. It's dependent upon how many players are playing the game overall during that weekend as to what the prize pool ends up being. For right now, or at least in the last event, I ended up getting about 10 points for being in Diamond and fulfilling all the Blessing of the Gods requirements. That gives you kind of an idea of what you'll be getting for that event and how you'll be able to track your record doing that. I hope you found the information in this video useful, and if you have any questions about GUdecks or Gods Unchained in general, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll answer it as quickly as I can. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.